Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of 6 for 6. I'm your host, Trevor Williams. This is Season 5, Episode 5 of 6 for 6. We're giving you the 6 best games to watch this week going into Super Bowl weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, the game of the week will be the Super Bowl, but we got to fill in the other 5 slots that we got on our glorious program today. Like I said, our record is getting better. We turn things around coming off of that previous record of 1-5. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our last episode was 4-2, ladies and gentlemen. We turned that around real quick. Now we're back at it, clawing our way to the title match. I would say claw our way back to the title match, but getting back to that glorious 500 and going beyond. So that means our Season 5 record thus far, ladies and gentlemen, is 11-13. It's very easy to turn this around again, get some couple more wins. You know, if we have staying above 500 in the win column, will get us closer to the dream of getting another perfect match. Now, if we go 3-3, you know, I think we close the margin down by like 1 win, so we'll be 1 point back. But we get another 4-2, I think we become 500, which will capitalize everything and might make us in a better situation. But we'll see how that comes out. I believe it does, because that'll give us 15 wins and then 15 losses. So we got to get another 4-2 this week, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully we can get this down. And I think we definitely have the right pick for us to get there to achieve another 4-2. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get the show on the road. First up in the 6th slot, ladies and gentlemen, we have number 8, Houston versus number 16, BYU men's college basketball. Saturday, February 7th, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN, ladies and gentlemen. This is a good matchup, even though BYU came off of a tough loss compared to Kansas and losing by 8 points, but hopefully they can try to bounce back out of the last 5 games. They only won 2, so hopefully they can try to turn it around here. But Houston, on the other hand, has won 4 out of the last 5 games. So very close matchup-wise. I just like how Houston, when they played TCU, they just had a bigger win margin by 9 points compared to BYU 6 points by margin, but they both lost to Texas Tech in different fashions. I would say Houston lost by 4, 90-86, and then BYU lost 84-71. So as you can see, Houston's the better squad across the board. Let's give you some quick stats to give you a frame of reference of what they're going up against, ladies and gentlemen. So Houston averages about almost 79 points per game. So very defensive heavy squad, as we mentioned, passing. BYU, you know some of the stats of last week. They average about almost 86 points per game. Against Houston wins that margin with almost 62 points given up per game, and BYU gives up about 70, almost 72 points per game. From the field, BYU shoots a little bit better from the field. Even though Houston has a 45% from the field, BYU has an 84% from the field. Rebounds go to BYU with 40 rebounds compared to Houston's is 37, I want to round up to. Assist margin, both move the ball relatively well with about 15 assists per game. Steals and blocks for the block party, ladies and gentlemen. BYU takes the block party almost 5 blocks per game compared to Houston's 4 blocks per game. Steals, they both average out with 8 steals per game, ladies and gentlemen. Margin-wise, victories, Houston's having a great year, ladies and gentlemen, with a 9-2 record, with a 7-1 Big 12 record. Now, if you look at BYU, they're 17-4 with a 5-3 Big 12 record. Overall, the winning percentage for them is about 44.2 compared to Houston's 55.8. I still like Houston in this matchup based on the last 5 games that they played. So give me Houston to win this matchup. You can get Houston, number 8 in the nation, versus BYU, number 16 in the nation. Men's college basketball, Saturday, February 7th, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. And I have Houston winning this matchup. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we got some women's college basketball for us in the midst of it going into Super Bowl Sunday. Number 19 Tennessee versus number 3 South Carolina women's college basketball. Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time on ABC, ladies and gentlemen. Tennessee, 6-1 in the SEC with a 14-5 record overall. South Carolina, another dominant year that they have so far. They're 21-2 with a 7-1 record in the SEC. So two two good teams in the SEC right now, but Tennessee has a tale of different stories. Since they took a beating to UConn, they played UConn close at first, and then the margin just started growing rapidly late in the game, and it just got out of control for Tennessee. I mean, out of the last 5 games, they really don't have many common opponents where you could take a quick peek where it sees how they're doing. So we're just going to go straight into the stats. As you know, we covered at least Tennessee here on 6 for 6, but we also talked about South Carolina on on our other show that we do for ETB. Definitely check that out. Hardwood Game Day, I think that's what we have it called as. So that takes place on Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern time. But this week we got a Super Bowl show that's going to be 2 hours at 6 p.m. Eastern time to 8 p.m. So we're going to figure out how to get through 2 hours worth of content somehow for Super Bowl. We'll see how that goes, ladies and gentlemen. But let's break down the stats for these two teams. Tennessee is about 78 points per game compared to South Carolina is 89 points per game. Then you have points against that goes to Tennessee. Well, that goes to South Carolina again with a 63 points given up for Tennessee. South Carolina about 56 points given up. But the field goal percentage is still at large. Tennessee still has a struggle with the field goal percentage, and we saw that happen in the UConn game. Even though UConn is a solid ball club all the way around, if not the best team in the nation for a reason. But Tennessee's from the field is about 41% compared to South Carolina's 51%. That's a huge margin that you can't make up for error. Unless Tennessee has a crazy night, on average, they just been not shooting well enough, I would say. But then you take a look at, ladies and gentlemen, within the rebounds category, relatively similar. South Carolina has about 44 rebounds per game compared to Tennessee's 41. Assists goes to South Carolina with 18 assists per game compared to Tennessee's 14. And then you have, ladies and gentlemen, the block party goes to South Carolina with 6 blocks per game compared to 4 blocks per game. But the steals go to Tennessee with almost 12 steals per game compared to South Carolina's 10 steals per game on average. But, ladies and gentlemen, just like South Carolina, I think Tennessee just has 2 bad games that are just too, not physical, but 2 good teams that you will see most likely in Elite 8 if you're running Tennessee's gauntlet that they probably end up going through in the tournament, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll see how that ends up shaking out for sure. But I have South Carolina end up winning this one. You can catch number 19 Tennessee versus number 3 South Carolina women's college basketball Super Bowl Sunday, February 8th, 3 p.m. Eastern time, noon Pacific time on ABC. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to some men's college basketball. We got some great action on the hoops. We got a good rivalry of Duke, number 4 in the nation, versus North Carolina, number 14 in the nation, men's college basketball, Saturday, February 7th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time on ESPN. This matchup, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be fearsome between these two schools. It's always a good classic rivalry across the board. Can never cease to amaze me that we end up going. But we do have some common opponents in this matchup. Duke is just a better squad. We're going to use the Stanford margin to really gut this one out. When North Carolina played Stanford, they lost by 5 points, 95-90. But when Duke played, it was a blowout. It was 80-50. So I like Duke to win this matchup relatively convincingly. Even when they played Cal, Duke destroyed Cal 71-56. And North Carolina ended up losing 84-78, ladies and gentlemen, in that type of game. So that's where I can see where the stands is, but we'll go through the stat line again, and we'll get you on what you can think. Maybe it might sway you to go North Carolina for the upset. But Duke, ladies and gentlemen, has 85 points per game compared to North Carolina's 83 points per game. The points against goes to Duke with 64 points given up compared to North Carolina's 70 points given up. From the field, Duke shoots about 50% compared to North Carolina's 48%, ladies and gentlemen. And on top of that, for rebounds, you have 40 across the board for both squads. Assists, both 17 assists per game. Blocks are about the same with about 4 blocks per game. But steals go to Duke with 8 steals a game compared to North Carolina's 6 steals per game. So give me Duke to win this matchup. This one, ladies and gentlemen, you can catch number 4 Duke versus number 14 North Carolina men's college basketball, February 7th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. And I have Duke winning this matchup. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we have in the 3 slot, number 5, Illinois in the nation versus Michigan State, number 10, men's college basketball, Saturday, February 7th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on Fox, ladies and gentlemen. Michigan State coming off a tough loss compared to Michigan. They sieged back 18 points down, but wasn't enough to win it. But Illinois has been dominant, knocking off Nebraska and beating Purdue convincingly. It's going to be a very interesting matchup when you can see Michigan beat Nebraska, destroying their undefeated season for Nebraska. So I think Illinois has the edge in this one, even though they are saying that Michigan State is favored with a 55% chance to win this matchup. I just like Illinois based on how they've been performing the last few games this week for the past couple of weeks. So give me the edge to Illinois in this one. But we can give you the quick stat line of what we got. Illinois averages about 85 points per game compared to North Carolina's 79.1 points per game. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the assists, you have points against that goes to Michigan State with 68 points given for Illinois compared to Michigan State 64. Both from the field averaging about 47%, rebounds about 41%. Block party, Illinois averages about 5 blocks per game compared to Michigan State's 4.5. Steals per game, ladies and gentlemen, goes to Michigan State with almost 6 steals per game compared to Illinois, 4 steals per game. So very good matchup across the board. I'm going to give Illinois the benefit of the doubt to win this one. It's going to be a very good, interesting matchup in the Big Ten. Both teams have really good, strong conference records. Illinois 10-1 and Michigan State 9-2. So overall, good experience. We can see these two teams make a decent shot at the Sweet 16, ladies and gentlemen. So give me Illinois, number 5 in the nation, versus Michigan State men's college basketball. Saturday, February 7th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on Fox, ladies and gentlemen. And I have Illinois winning this matchup. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we got some women's action for you. Again, we got number 2 UCLA versus number 8 Michigan. Women's college basketball. Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time on Fox, ladies and gentlemen. A great matchup for us today in the game of women's basketball. 2 good schools coming off of it. Michigan coming through a tough overtime victory over Michigan State. But UCLA has been plowing through teams making a statement with how good their record is, with only 1 loss but undefeated in the Big Ten. But it looks like Michigan is trying to be a spoiler to give them another loss in their overall record, but getting the first loss in Big Ten play. It's going to be an interesting one and a thrilling one, even though UCLA has about a 63% chance to win compared to Michigan's 38% chance to win. It's still going to be an interesting matchup across the board. But without further ado, let's get the quick stat lines of what we got here. Michigan averages about 88 points per game compared to UCLA's 87 points per game. So that goes to the points per game goes to Michigan. For points against goes to UCLA with a 57 points given up compared to Michigan's 61 points given up. From the field, UCLA shoots better from the field, ladies and gentlemen, with a 52% chance from the field compared to Michigan's 48% from the field. Rebounds are relatively same with 43 for UCLA compared to Michigan's 41.5. Assists go to UCLA with 22, almost 23, compared to Michigan's 17.5. Block party, ladies and gentlemen, goes to UCLA with about 4.4, almost 4.5, compared to Michigan's almost 3.5. Steals go to Michigan in that favor to 12 steals per game, compared to UCLA's 6.6 steals per game. I like this matchup across the board, ladies and gentlemen. Definitely going to be a hard physical game between these two schools, but you can't get much better leading into Super Bowl 60 after this game concludes. I think this is a good way to really kick things up, to kick things off right for the Super Bowl. You can catch number 2 UCLA versus number 8 Michigan women's college basketball Sunday, February 8th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time on Fox, ladies and gentlemen. And I have UCLA winning it. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's start talking about the Super Bowl. Seattle Seahawks, Patriots, Sunday, February 8th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time on NBC and on Peacock, ladies and gentlemen. Great Super Bowl we're going to witness. Can Seattle reclaim their glory days of getting that second Super Bowl? Even though everyone's going to come back to it. If Seattle's down and needs to score a touchdown to win the game, will Seattle run the ball or will they pass? That's what we all need to know. I would say you would run the ball so you don't repeat stakes of Super Bowls of pass for them when it gets picked off. But let's keep that in mind. If they run and they lose and get stopped, then I don't think you have any bad calls. Well, it depends what the call is and how the line is sets up. But we'll see what ends up happening in the Super Bowl. Can Sam Darnold win for Seattle, getting his first Super Bowl ring? Or will Drake Maye restart the new Patriots dynasty with himself, taking care of the AFC East, winning that divisional title, and now making his first ever Super Bowl appearance? It's going to be a very interesting matchup across the board, ladies and gentlemen. Even though Seattle is favorite in this matchup with a 60, almost 61 point basically saying about 60 to 40% chance to win for how this game is shaking out. Both teams are 14-3, so very even across the board. I mean, they took care of an injured Denver Broncos team without Bo Nix, and they end up winning in a close one in a blizzard, not a blizzard, but snow coming through that game, taking care of the CJ Stroud and the Texans and beating Justin Herbert and the Chargers. So they took care of a good high-powered offense in the Chargers, even though the Chargers had the worst offensive line in the league, but shutting down Justin Herbert nonetheless. Then they survived the Texans defense, which is very, very difficult to get through, and then surviving Denver, and that's a venom of games. But Seattle took care of the 49ers and the Rams, two really good, solid teams across the board. But the 49ers just laid goose eggs both times when they played. And when they played the Rams, it was a thrilling matchup from the late of that game. So I like how the Super Bowl is going to end out. I'm going to go lean towards the Seahawks, but then again, Drake Maye could be on his Tom Brady era. When Tom Brady gets to his first Super Bowl, he wasn't that great, but he was able to execute to win that game. And I think Drake Maye might be able to do the same thing. But we'll see what ends up happening on Super Bowl Sunday. Seahawks, Patriots, Super Bowl 60, Sunday, February 8th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time on NBC and on Peacock. And have the Seahawks winning it. Let's do a quick recap, and we'll get you on out of here so you can enjoy the game. Houston versus number 16, BYU. Men's college basketball, February 7th, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. And I have Houston winning this matchup. And the fifth slot, ladies and gentlemen, we have number 19, Tennessee versus number 3, South Carolina women's college basketball, Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time on ABC. And I have South Carolina winning this matchup. In the fourth slot, ladies and gentlemen, we have number 4, Duke versus number 14, North Carolina men's college basketball, Saturday, February 7th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time on ESPN. And I have Duke winning this matchup. In the third slot, ladies and gentlemen, we have number 5, Illinois versus number 10 in the nation, Michigan State. Men's college basketball, Saturday, February 7th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on Fox. Next up in the number 2, and I have Illinois winning this matchup. And our 2 slot, ladies and gentlemen, we have UCLA, number 2 in the nation, versus Michigan, number 8 in the nation. Women's college basketball, Sunday, February 8th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time on Fox, ladies and gentlemen. And I have UCLA winning this matchup. And to cap us off, ladies and gentlemen, Super Bowl Sunday, Seahawks, Patriots, Super Bowl 60, Sunday, February 8th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time on NBC and on Peacock. And I have the Seahawks winning it. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, our last episode was 4-2. We need another 4-2 campaign to get us back to 500. If we go the perfect 6 for 6, we'll be up 2 games. If not, if we go 5-1, we'll be 1 game up. So we'll see how that shakes out. But at the same time, we got to get above 500. If we can do that, we're looking pretty going into next week after Super Bowl Sunday concludes. That means, ladies and gentlemen, our season 5 record is 11-13, ladies and gentlemen. So we're on the up and up. We're about to get back to 500 this week. So make sure you tune on to another episode of 6 for 6, and we'll catch you next time. So long for now. Bye-bye.